the uncertainty around travel that we saw last summer, with this announcement, it doesn't exactly feel like that, does it?
It actually feels a bit reminiscent of last summer, doesn't it? Here we are, a year on, talking again about some last-minute changes to travel from France. So it does rather have the feeling of last summer, and that is despite, of course, the fact that we now have this vaccination programme. What ministers are saying, what we've heard reported this morning, is that they always said that they wouldn't hesitate to act rapidly if they thought they needed to, if they thought there was a particular problem. But as you've been reflecting, some real dismay from the travel industry, who were probably hoping to get going to some extent this summer. And it does create that air of uncertainty around travel going forward. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're a couple of days away where in England, most legal restrictions on social contact are going to be lifted. Mask wearing, despite some local exceptions and business exceptions, won't be legally required anymore. So a loosening of controls domestically, but a tightening of them internationally. And I thought it was quite interesting this morning hearing from the former Health Secretary and Chair of the Health Select Committee, Conservative MP Jeremy Hunt, who was sort of suggesting that what the government is doing is prioritising getting the domestic economy back up and running again over loosening up international travel. But of course, travel companies, we've had a horrific year, of course, as a result of coronavirus, are going to be pretty furious and pretty worried as well going forward. And then, of course, there's the huge inconvenience and concern for those travellers who are affected.
Yeah, and many in the travel industry talking about needing more support from the government, financial support from the government at this stage. I mean, I've got to ask the question, why did the government put France onto the red list? Why create this amber plus, as some people are referring to it? Because that really muddies the waters, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting to create a sort of subcategory of the traffic light system. There had been speculation yesterday that France was going to move on to the red list. And I suppose one thing to consider is that it would have been a pretty significant diplomatic move to put France, one of our nearest neighbours, a major travel destination, on the red list, where controls really are tight in terms of anyone who can come from a red list country to the United Kingdom. So it would have been a major diplomatic step. So I guess it's a little bit of a middle ground. I mean, what the government's saying is the situation is bad enough to take these steps in France, but not so bad as to move it on to the red list. And as I say, it would have been quite a significant diplomatic step. But there is also some reaction today of people feeling fairly nonplussed by the move, including a former ambassador to France from UK, Lord Ricketts, basically suggesting it's diversionary tactics. Now, I'm sure the UK government would reject that, but I think there will be quite a lot of scrutiny over the next day or so as to exactly why this decision has been made. A couple of days out, of course, from so-called, as some people sometimes refer to it, as Freedom Day. But look, I think it does all play into this sense that we've increasingly had over the last week or so, that idea that we're heading towards some sort of inexorable road to freedom without any blocks along the way, looking increasingly unlikely, certainly specifically as regards to international travel.
Okay, Jess, thank you very much for that. Jessica Parker, our political correspondent. Pop-up vaccine centres are opening across England in shops and parks and lots of different venues this weekend as part of an NHS Grab a Jab initiative. The vaccination hubs will be set up in Primark stores, the Tate Modern, and even at the Open Championship. The aim is to boost the vaccine uptake among young people ahead of Monday, when the majority of coronavirus restrictions are set to be lifted.
I would urge you to come in and get yourself vaccinated. There will be a wonderful atmosphere, and there will be lots of help and support and advice and guidance for you. To everybody, anybody who's over 18 and eligible to have a vaccine, please do come forward if you haven't had the jab, and we are here and ready and waiting for you.
Meanwhile, more than 35 million people in England will get a free flu jab this winter. Over 50s and all children up to the age of 16 will be included. The expanded programme will be delivered alongside booster jabs for COVID-19. Here's our health and science correspondent, James Gallagher.
Flu all but disappeared last winter. The restrictions, social distancing and mask wearing that slowed down the spread of coronavirus also prevented the usual round of winter bugs. But now we're getting closer to normal. The fear is we could have a bigger than usual flu season that could combine with COVID and other infections to put the NHS under.
A federal judge in Texas has ruled that the Obama-era program that allowed some undocumented immigrants to remain in this country is illegal, and he blocked the government from accepting new applicants. Hundreds of thousands of people who came to the United States as children are protected from deportation under a program known as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. The ruling from Judge Andrew Hannon doesn't immediately cancel the program for the so-called Dreamers who are already participating in it, though it once again leaves them in devastating legal limbo. Hannon is an appointee of President George W. Bush, and he ruled that Congress didn't authorize the Homeland Security Department to create DACA. But Hannon also wrote that it wouldn't be fair to immediately end a program that so many people rely on. The Justice Department is widely expected
this year because last year cases were very low. They were partly low because people weren't going out and about and they weren't mixing. But they were also partly low because so many people were vaccinated. Over 80% of the over 65s took up the.
Actually, can't tell.
Yeah. Shock and devastation in Western Europe as the region witnesses its worst flash floods in more than half a century. Scores of residents are homeless after the floods wiped out their homes in minutes. The death toll has risen above 150, with more than 1,000 people unaccounted for. Many European leaders blame climate change for the catastrophe.
Days of torrential downpours and then total devastation. Aerial footage from the German town of Schuld highlights the extent of the damage. The community these residents were once part of is now unrecognizable.
Schlimm war dann auch, konnte keinem geholfen werden. Und die Leute winken aus dem Fenster, links und rechts Treppenhäuser zusammen. Und dazwischen winken sie und Glück gehabt, so. Hat überlebt.
Das hat eine Wunderbucht erwartet. Und da war mein Haus drin. Da flog die Haustür aus, da will ich in den Garten oben in den Buch von außen. Da war der vollen Außen.
Germany has seen the country's largest mass loss of life in years, and there are fears the death toll will continue to rise. The states of North Rhine-Westphalia and Rhineland-Palatinate have been hit especially hard. In the town of Erstadt, locals are battling the waters, claiming other areas of the town in an effort to stem further flooding. Belgium and the Netherlands have also seen swings of devastation. Rescue teams were out in force in the southern Dutch province of Valkenburg on Thursday, where flooded rivers damaged many houses. And a crisis response centre has been set up in the Belgian town of Liège, the locals displaced by the rising waters. Julie Fernandez is a city official.
Bon, écoutez, je veux dire qu'on est encore dans la difficulté et je pense qu'on n'a pas fini. On est prêt au pire en espérant que le pire n'arrivera pas. Je vous dis, il n'y a pas de difficulté. Au contraire, on a été inondé de solidarité, que ce soit par les agents communaux, les agents de la ville qui se sont tous mis à disposition pour venir organiser les centres, et par les citoyens qui ont fait preuve d'une grande solidarité. Vous voyez derrière moi tous les livres, tous les vêtements qu'on a reçus en quelques heures.
Mobile phone networks have collapsed in some regions, making it hard for friends and family to track down their loved ones. Around 4,500 people have been evacuated from communities downstream, and a stretch of motorway has been closed amid fears of a breach. The German military has deployed over 700 soldiers to help with rescue efforts.
More bad news from a NASA study predicting a surge in serious coastal flooding as soon as the next decade. That's about 70 years earlier than what was previously predicted. The cause of the flooding is a perfect storm of global warming and the effect of what's called moon wobbling. That's a regular wobble in the moon's orbit that takes nearly 19 years to complete. Now, this wobble causes high tide in half of its cycle that will wind up with rising sea levels in the mid-2030s, and that's going to cause floods. The NASA study focused on U.S. coasts, but it's applicable to the whole world.
Researchers are urging city planners to prepare accordingly. And that's Asia now for this hour. Headlines anytime at cna.asia. Plus, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Helps improve the schooling rate of children and families working in the industry. In serious cases involving abuse or forced labour, the children remain at the centre where they attend school.
At sea, far from prying eyes, work on Nord Stream 2 is in full swing. Russia and Germany want to complete the gas pipeline, linking the two countries as soon as possible, but others are doing all they can to stop it happening. Environmentalist NGOs, Europe, Ukraine, and the United States are set on preventing a project which is as much geopolitical as it is economic. Nord Stream 2, a pipeline too far, on France 24 and France24.com.
The healing power of nature. What can it do? And how does it work? We will share natural healing methods. Talk to a renowned researcher. Recommend healthy delicacies from the herb garden. And show you how to start charlatans and the dirty tricks.
Good shame. Next on TW.
It's a classic among Germany's city trips. Frankfurt with its exciting contrast. From the skyline to the old town and from the tavern culture around the cider called Ebelvoid that I am eager to try to the nightlife in the station district.
Check in. In 60 minutes on TW. What secrets lie behind these walls? Discover new adventures in 360 degrees and explore fascinating World Heritage sites. DW World.
Data.
YouTube, Zoom.
Microsoft Teams. AI connected. Constrainer fault.
Welcome back to all of you watching us here in the United States, Canada, and around the world. I'm Kim Berluber. You're watching CNN Newsroom. The death toll from catastrophic flooding in Western Europe has now passed 150. Power and communications have been knocked out in the affected areas, making it difficult to know how many people are actually missing. Hundreds of soldiers have been mobilized in Germany to help with relief efforts. In the Netherlands, Dutch officials have ordered 10,000 residents to evacuate the city of Venlo near the German border. The river there is rising faster than expected. Last hour, I spoke with Tanja Knopf, the head of volunteer services of the German Red Cross. She said the challenges facing emergency workers and flood victims are daunting. Here she is.
The situation for all the people and for us is a really serious one, as the infrastructure is totally destroyed, houses are destroyed, and we have to evacuate all these people from really extreme and serious situation. And now the people who are evacuated need support They need clothing, food, drink, medical support. Their regular